Hi, I'm Dr. Hackey Reitman. Welcome to another episode of Exploring Different Brains. And today I have the privilege of renewing acquaintance with the great Jilika Kumar, the head of Mentra. And Jilika is going to tell you all about it. Jilika, you do so much for so many. Thanks for taking some time to be with us.
It's a pleasure. I'm excited. Great to
Uh,
see you again.
Likewise. Why don't you tell our audience all about Mentra and how it got started?
Absolutely, yes. So I, first of all, am the little sister of a non-speaking autistic individual named Vikram. And growing up with him, always, wondered why I had the opportunity to get an education, to get, to go overseas, to work at a job. And simultaneously, he was oftentimes, staying at home, didn't really have the same opportunities, was very parent dependent, didn't have that sense, that income that comes and that independence that comes with income. And in college, I was studying at Georgia Tech, and I was doing research with the non-speaking community, as well as folks who are above the age of 18 and 22, and realized that, while there's all this focus and there's an amazing amount of work being done in the early intervention, sort of younger ages of the community, we were looking at, okay, well, what happens after, because a lot of times the government support systems sort of fall off and there's that cliff at the age of 22. And most of an individual's life is usually spent, in work, finding employment and finding their career. However, for this community, because there's, specifically for neurodivergence with the 80% under and unemployment rate, we realized there's all these systemic barriers to actually getting to finding employment. And if the individual does find employment, it's oftentimes not, tapping into their fullest potential. It's underemployment. And that's where we decided, well, can we, understand this community well enough, do a lot of research and figure out what's the data, around all of the holistic factors. So we're not just evaluating by work experience or education. We're looking at, someone's natural strengths, their inclusion essentials, their environmental sensitivities, their, interests in their finding their career, their special interests even. And merging all of that together to find that ideal job. So that's, and after going on this journey and sort of learning about, technologies and tools that could enable my brother to communicate, I'm realizing that he actually is, brilliant, and he himself wants to find employment and find that fulfillment through his career. So, it all kind of goes around, full circle. If we're able to empower neurodivergents across the world to find employment, maybe we can change the minds of employers to become inclusive enough for individuals who might not speak or who might need accommodations like a communication partner or someone with them on the job. So yeah, that's a bit about how it started a few years ago while we were still in school.
How is your brother doing now?
Oh, he's great. I was just talking to him right before this, and I had a quick few moments to just say hi. He's living with my family. He is typing more frequently now that we found the right tools. He learned to type only at the age of 27. So up until then, there was minimal communication. And now he's writing, his favorite hobby is poetry. That's what he loves. So he's always writing poems, and we're always trying to figure them out. And then because, he writes with, I have to take a dictionary to just look up the words that he uses. He's so eloquent. And he's looking to make his mark on the world. So he's doing great. Yeah, thank you for asking.
And how is Mentra doing outside of your brother?
Yeah. Oh, it has been a roller coaster for sure. I mean, we were in college, we did our research, and then I graduated, and my co-founder and I, Connor, sort of are been pushing Mentra full steam. So we have 6 team members on board who are all, neurodivergents and advocates in the community, and we've built this platform. It's basically like a LinkedIn for the neurodivergent community. We realized the Indeeds and LinkedIn's don't really work or collect that data. So we figured, let's just build something from the ground up that's built with accessibility on the ground floor. And it's doing great. We have 2,000 neurodivergent, job seekers who've signed up onto the platform. We're speaking with companies to hire these incredible individuals across various industries. So we're looking at, all the way from healthcare and the creative fields to technology and, the design and also the finance and healthcare, wide range of industries that we're looking to bring neurodivergence into. So, yeah, I mean, we're going full steam. Next step for us is, bringing the employers on board. We have around 7 so far, and we're looking to get, quadruple, exponentially grow that to be neurodivergent, employers across the country who are hiring neurodivergents into all of their roles. So they're making their entire hiring process neuro-inclusive. That's the goal.
So for a neurodivergent individual out there who might be watching this and is a bit scared to apply for a job, what advice would you have for them?
Advice for individuals who are scared to apply to jobs. Yeah. Well, I would say, there is this push and this movement happening right now in the community where, self-advocates are speaking about it, and with both outside organizations and within organizations. And, as someone who, spent 2 years in corporate America before working on Mentra full time, there was sort of this, there's this, folks are coming out, they're sharing their stories, there's employee networks that are being built, there's support systems that are being put in place. I mean, it's not perfect. It's going to take a while for every company to embrace it. But there are, people out there who are advocating for you, championing you in the workplace. And, it's, there's no need to feel, worried or scared, because I think unmasking in the workplace is sort of becoming a more, common factor, and it's not something that's ostracized. It's something that's becoming more and more celebrated. So I would say, if there is a workplace that is right for you, and it's just about finding that and tapping into your fullest potential. So we're here to help, however we can. And bring those neuro-inclusive employers directly to you so that you don't have to go out and search for them and figure out, are they really neuro-inclusive? What are they really doing? And when we can make all of that very transparent.
How does our audience get in touch with you?
Yeah, well, our website is www.mentra.me. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to info@mentra.me. I'm also on LinkedIn. I can share the link below. And yeah, I would say, we have a passionate team, and we're always open to feedback. We've built our entire platform with community-driven design. So if there's, features that you would like for us to build someday, we hope for this to grow into sort of a network where you can be able to connect with companies that value your strengths, and job coaches and voc rehab centers, and sort of the whole ecosystem of employment services out there for neurodivergence that today are, siloed sometimes. And we want to turn this into sort of a national and even international global centralization of all of the, resources and supports out there for neurodivergence in the workplace.
So, Jillica, if I'm a neurodivergent individual and I want to utilize Mentra to help me on my journey, tell us how we go about that.
Absolutely. So where you think about Mentra as sort of a LinkedIn for the neurodiverse, right? So you go onto our website, you sign up. We do ask a few questions that you might have never seen before, around, your environmental sensitivities, what kinds of workplace work best for you, what kind of team environments work best. And then once you go through that process, we automatically build what we call a Mentra profile. And that's basically like a next generation of resumes that are a whole lot more holistic and don't just cover, education and work experience. We go a lot deeper to really understand, what are the strengths of the individual? What are the inclusion essentials they need to thrive? What are some work samples, any recommendations or courses they've taken that demonstrate proficiency? So we think about, new and creative ways to demonstrate skills to employers. And then that's exactly what gets shared with different companies. So, once you create your profile, you'll be able to see a dashboard with all of the jobs, and you can go in and sort of select what you like, select what you don't like. We learn from that. Our technology learns to get you better matches in the future. And we put you in front of employers. So we make sure that all of the neuro-inclusive employers are trained and are ready to tap into your strengths. So you can do that at mentra.me.
Jilka, I know you're a big fan of and proponent and champion of universal design. Do you want to speak about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Universal design is core to everything that we've built. The fact that you can design for someone who might be quote unquote an edge case, or someone who, has a disability, who that isn't everyone. It's the latest stat, which is constantly changing, is, 1 in every 7. And, if you're designing for that individual, that makes life, better for everyone. And we've seen that with a whole lot of inventions, including, the telephone, closed captioning and subtitles in movies, even SMS texts were created for someone, who had a hearing impairment. And so there's a lot of, creations that have shaped where we've come today, that were designed for individuals, with different forms of disabilities. And we were able to now, take that and evolve, all of society. All of us benefit from phones and text messaging and subtitles. How else could we watch, Korean TV shows, or all the things out there in different countries in the world? So it's been incredibly, a huge aspect of how we've built our tool as well, because we're saying, there's a hiring process that exists. It wasn't necessarily built for those who think differently. What if we take that same process and build it from the ground up with universal design? And then you're just making a platform that works better for everyone, a platform that's inclusive from the ground up, and you're considering edge cases from the very beginning. And so that's really our key tenet. Thanks for that question.
Jillica, you and I were both lucky enough where we met to receive our honorary degrees from that wonderful institution, Beacon College, which does so much for those of us whose brains are a little bit different. Tell us, what your thoughts on education in general, and also about Beacon College as an example?
Yeah, phenomenal question. There are so many different, forms of education now emerging with technology. So, the classic universities, and then we've also got, YouTube and Coursera and all of these amazing sort of upskilling platforms that are out there. And when we, are working with employers, a big thing we say is, someone might not have had the chance to have that traditional, university education and then get work experience in exactly the field that they want to go into. So you can't, judge someone's, competence or ability based on what they've done in the past. And so many individuals, especially in neurodivergent communities, don't get the chance to, go to college or get a traditional degree. And so there's all of these other forms of, learning, experiential learning, and upskilling programs online, and even schools that are designed particularly for folks who think differently, with curriculums that are built for neurodivergence. And Beacon College is one of those schools, and it's amazing that they've built an entire sort of ecosystem on their campus where neurodivergents can leave their parents and go onto this campus and sort of find the freedom that comes with being on a college campus and have those independent skills. So that's just wonderful. And then from like education as a whole standpoint, I think, even for example, my brother is taking a poetry course called ModPo by the University of Pennsylvania, UPenn, and he could have never imagined, getting an education from UPenn professors, but they're astonished by his work, and he feels so gratified by having that opportunity. And so it's really making education accessible for everyone, because he can't sit in a classroom and sort of, it's difficult for him to sort of keep up with everyone. He needs his breaks, he needs to walk around. So yeah, there's education out there that's really shaping the way of how neurodivergents learn and how they can eventually gain the skills in order to find fulfilling careers. So it's really, really exciting.
I think for you and your mission, I have to believe that COVID was a good break, where everything became virtual and opened up all of these different educational and employment pathways for those of us who are limited in many things besides mobility.
100%. Just the world going remote made it so much more accessible for folks who, for example, couldn't leave their families, or, had their support systems and couldn't travel to the city overseas or in another state to get a job. So it made the workforce, a whole lot more remote, which was great. And then just for our team, we grew during the pandemic because now there's all of this push for, different, now that we're going back into the office, or for many companies, how do we make it, accommodating of everyone's needs, whether that's sensory rooms or quiet rooms, or having, no uniform, or, textures, and making sure folks are not allowed or add loud sounds or blinking lights. All of these things are being taken into consideration now, that we're going back into work. Whereas before, if we were kind of going the same old, we don't know, like, would things have really changed? Like, it might have taken longer. It was really a catalyst for the neurodivergent community to have remote work opportunities, for sure.
Julika, tell me your thoughts on, as you are a self-advocate, as a neurodivergent yourself for ADHD, okay? Why don't you share with our audience some of the tools that you have found very helpful for yourself for ADHD?
Yeah, that is a great question, and something that, I've sort of experienced and struggled with for a lot of my life, and a lot of times, because my brother's, condition was, he's on the spectrum and he's a non-speaking individual, just being around, him and his story and how that influenced, my own neurodiversity story, and learning about that. It's been, really great. I think in terms of some of the tools that have helped me, I would say, it's interesting because I have sort of built mechanisms around me to help, be on top of things. I think especially as responsibility grows and pressure grows, having, 500 like to-do lists, sticky notes, whiteboards, all around me, kind of keeping me, on top of everything, and making sure, I still, some things fall through, and sometimes it's hard to sort of, especially be in person. Sometimes it's challenging, with, not wanting to seem, like I'm not paying attention, or might be like what other, people see as rude, but really just trying to figure out how to process things, and, not necessarily, not paying attention in any way. But, yeah, I think the mechanisms and tools, to sort of stay focused, take decompression breaks, express myself. I think now that there's a lot more talk about neurodiversity, it's a lot easier to like say, hey, I need, a few moments. It's not you, it's just, I need, some decompression time, and then I'll come back to this. It's been a lot more, you know, intuitive. It's more easy to communicate with others, especially those in the community who understand. So yeah, developing those communication techniques as well as tracking techniques have been really helpful to kind of stay on top of things. And I will say the remote world with, Zoom has kept it so much easier. Things like even just giving eye contact, and, things like that, where in person, and, different kind of signals in the room. And there's so many things we've learned about that remote work has helped with. So that's been helpful for me as well.
One of our wonderful interns, Ali Idris, Ali is a great self-advocate for ADHD, and he's going to be a great physician. He's trying to get into medical school now. So he combined with the ADHD coach, Brooke Schnitman, and they have on our website on differentbrains.org, power tools for ADHD. And they have so many episodes done already, which are, brief 10 minutes or less episodes, each one with a tool. And now they're working on a Different Brains book for that, because we're into tools. We want to give people, instead of just a lot of words like what you do, this is a pathway to a job. This is what employers need. This is what you need. Let's help get there. And if we start adding up all the different neurodiversities, ADHD, autism, and so much, there's a lot of differences out there. And I love the way you stress strength-based. What are your gifts? What are your strengths? As opposed to, just what are your weaknesses?
Exactly. Yeah. In fact, speaking of ADHD, I heard a quote the other day that ADHDers are 300% more likely to start their own sort of organization or business. And I just thought, like, as so many ADHDers, dropping out of school, dropping out of work places has been, a systemic issue. And having the opportunity to like find, tap into the strengths of that form, of that neurodiversity, and then find a role where you can kind of, have multiple threads in your head going on and kind of steer each one of them forward, has been really helpful. So I'm glad that you have that resource available. I'm definitely going to check it out after this.
Oh, well, I'll tell you what, our over 18-year-old interns, because like you, what I found was, oh, there's so much for the kids, the children, and they certainly need emphasis, but it seems like society inadvertently discriminated against adults. Like once you turn 18, get lost. So we start our internships at 18, and we've got a great group and have had, and again, because of the virtuality of things nowadays, now we have interns in India, California, Texas. We're all over the place, England. It's really been good. You want to repeat your website for those who want to follow up and see what you're doing at Mentra?
Yeah, so it's www.mentra.me. And to reach out to us, it's info@mentra.me. And yeah, we're on LinkedIn and Instagram. Our growing platforms is at Mentra team on Instagram. And yeah, I think that's
Great.
how to stay in touch.
Yes. And what is one thing you would like all employers to know about neurodivergent talent?
So if I were to give an employer or employers a tip about working with, neurodivergence, I would say something that's been really important is that we've noticed, especially in, whether it's Fortune 500 companies or small businesses, is to really be kind, open-minded, empathetic towards the differences of a neurodivergent who might, perceive the world a completely different way, and, understanding that there are, strengths that lie within that individual, whether, might not appear from what meets the eye. And especially for someone, like my brother, and uncovering his strengths after 27 years of knowing him, I realized I didn't really know him because I didn't have the translation layer, the tool that would enable me to communicate and connect with him. And all along, I kept an open mind, and wondered what if he really is, cognitively way more capable than I could have imagined. And I think that goes true for, every neurodivergent individual that I've met who has their own, unique talents and strengths that the world really needs to tap into, because it is the type of different thinking that will evolve humanity and that will solve all of the greatest challenges of our day. And it's just time for workforces to open their doors. And the way we can start is by being open-minded and compassionate and caring, and, changing our ways in order to accommodate and, include the individual, rather than expecting the individual to change. We change as a society. So yeah, that would be sort of the advice I would share.
Well, Jilika Kumar of Mentra, thank you so much for spending time with us and educating us here at Different Brains. And good luck with all of your future endeavors, and please keep in touch.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Exploring Different Brains is a production of Different Brains. Visit us at differentbrains.org.